Yes, I'm afraid I do after that. I'm afraid my first-year law professor would have flunked the three speakers before me. The problem is, we are not a court of law. We're not a court of fairness. We're a school board and a school system. And on behalf of the school system, I'd like to make 2 or 3 obvious points. Number one, all these personal stories, which have nothing to do with the law and nothing to do with the written grievance that's before you, all these personal stories, would not be admissible in any kind of adjudicated proceeding, not under oath, they're not subject to cross-examination. So for the record, let me point out, on behalf of the school system, I disagree with most of the facts you've been hearing from the last 3 people. Number 2, quantitative part of the analysis of the evaluation. Notice none of the personal stories relate to the quantitative analysis. The quantitative analysis is the progress, the performance of the students. They didn't come in here and say, gee, my students should have done better, or gee, my students could have done better, or gee, my students were hampered on this test, or this exam, or this course of study. That would have something to do with quantitative analysis. They didn't come in here and say the state board has messed up the mathematics on the quantitative analysis. They didn't say anything about the quantitative analysis except, I don't want to associate with my name. Well, I'm sorry, state legislatures, they, quote unquote, passed a law that does associate it with their name if they're the principal, etc. They can go lobby in the state legislature on that. It's not something this board has authority or jurisdiction over. And they don't give you any grounds to say that the quantitative analysis was wrong. None, 0. One thing they give you stories about are their personal interaction with Dr. Webb. And finally, third point, they finally got to Ms. Young did in the very last paragraph of her prepared remarks and said, and by the way, Dr. Webb, it's not Tim Webb we're talking about, it's the director of schools that we're talking about. That's right. Change every reference they made to Dr. Webb to the director of schools. And what that means is the director of schools can and does, at every school system I'm familiar with, make changes, update, supplement, and there's no reason this board, if you so choose, can't vote tonight to say, okay, the evaluation is not complete. Those parts that can be supplemented and completed by the director of schools should be. They have no indictment of what Dr. Curtis, the director of schools, did and proposed to do with the letter to the file, etc. There's nothing wrong with that. There's no state law that requires anything different. I understand people being unhappy. All of us have been put in positions where we didn't get what we wanted or we're unhappy about what we did get. That doesn't make it the law that procedural missteps change that substance. Everything they say about the qualitative aspect relates to procedure, form over substance. They're not saying there's something substantively wrong. They're just saying deadlines weren't met and a lot of facts, stories really about the director of schools, Dr. Webb at the time, didn't do this, didn't do that. And then when the individual grievance talked to you, I heard them say, well, I did have these 2 meetings with the director of schools about the evaluation. I just didn't like the way it was carried out. Didn't like what he then said. Well, yeah, I've had evaluations like that. All of us have in life. Doesn't mean the evaluation didn't take place. Just means maybe it wasn't timely, maybe it wasn't on the right piece of paper. No court's going to pay attention.
Did not take place.
I'm sorry.
Make your quantitative information for all the principals,
Sir.
not just 2 or 3.
Sir, please. I'd rather you be able to stay instead of us asking you to leave. Thank you.
Well, let me make a clear legal point here. The grievance, which due process requires to be in writing, the grievance of both individuals is identical, word for word, so I'll only read for one of them. It gives the basis for the grievance and then the remedy, the corrective action they want. The basis for the grievance is not any of these stories you've heard tonight. Not a single one of them is mentioned in the grievance. And these are not stories that happened since July 12 when the grievance was filed. As you heard from the dates that were given, these all happened a year ago and 6 months ago, etc. They didn't file a grievance about what they came to talk about here tonight. their grievance, or the 3 steps Ms. McCarthy talked about. She wants a completed evaluation. That is the basis of grievance they filed in writing. She wants a true statement, and she wants reinstatement. Now, that's not in there anywhere. The 2 corrective actions in writing signed by Ms. Simpkins and Ms. McCarthy are removal of their name as to the quantitative data and a letter saying Director of Schools Webb was guilty of dereliction of duty about the evaluation. This board's got no authority to make an accusation against any former employee, staff, administrator, principal, or director of schools. That's not your legal status. If they've got a complaint personally against Tim Webb, as one of the speakers said, they need an attorney and they need to sue him and let a court of law that will only hear relevant evidence, subject to evidentiary objections, sort all that out. That's not a matter for the school board to take up. And those are the only actions they asked for in the grievance. Letter condemning Dr. Webb and removal of their name from the quantitative data. So on that basis alone, I think as a matter of jurisdiction authority, this board has to deny what they're saying tonight. But on their original grievance that they filed in writing, which is really what we're here about tonight, where they say, I want my evaluation completed, that's a matter you do have jurisdiction over, and that you can uphold in addition to what Dr. Curtis did if you so choose. Thank you.